Good evening, everyone. I'm Barry Craig, President and Vice Chancellor of Huron University, and a real pleasure to welcome you to this evening's event. This is the second Spark Series event. Some of you were at the first one last fall when Michael Medline was our guest. This evening is it's going to be pretty hard to beat a title, Mobsters, Money, and the Existential Threat to Canadian Sports. So come on, that's pretty good. We're very fortunate this evening to have some tremendous guests with us. With us is Tim Hutzul. Tim is the General Counsel of Soccer Canada, but also a Huron dad. Professor Rich McLaren, member of the Order of Canada and an expert on ethics in sports, and also a Huron alum. And then our special guest speaker, who I'll just say a word about in a moment. Now, SPARK, I'm sure you were wondering this, this stands for Stimulate Possibilities, Awareness, Resilience, and Knowledge. This is a speaker series and an event series and an academic enrichment program that has been made possible by a very generous donation from the Schulich Foundation. And that's why we're able to be here this evening. And the purpose of this speaker series is to bring highly successful, recognizable people and speakers to campus, ones that will spark curiosity, and not only across our student community, but across the wider community as well. And this evening, we're taking on a tremendously relevant topic, 5 days from the Super Bowl, probably one of the, if not the biggest betting day of the entire calendar. And not only the topic, but the speaker, and one of the premier authorities in the world on this issue, Professor Declan Hill, who's right there, by the way.
Yes.
He just snuck up on me like that. Declan Hill's a graduate, University of Toronto and Oxford University. He's a true polymath. That means he's good at everything. He's a journalist, an academic investigator, and an associate professor at the University of New Haven. He specializes in the study of organized crime and corruption in international sports. His first book, called The Fix, and I commend this to all of you. It's a read that it's a thick book, it's an important and serious book, but it's an eminently readable work. It's on organized crime in soccer, and it's the story of how he infiltrated a group of Asian match fixers as they fix matches at the World Cup. It's become a bestseller in 21 languages. He's even investigated and taught students following through an investigation on Jeffrey Epstein, which you may have heard about recently. He was an investigative journalist, a news presenter for the CBC. He's published peer-reviewed articles about sports corruption and gambling, every major newspaper in the world, the New York Times, the London Times, BBC, every outlet he has appeared on. Won numerous awards for his work, including from Amnesty International and awards from the Danish government and the Canadian Associate of Journalism. Believe me when I tell you, this guy knows what he's talking about. And as you're about to find out, he's not exactly boring either. So I won't waste any more of his time. Declan, over to you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, my job tonight is to blow your minds. So if you walk out of here with your intellectual soul unchanged, then I failed. And I want you guys just to take a quick photo of my email, and if I don't change your mind, if I don't small, significant change to how you think about the world, then please drop me an email. Be polite, please, the young lady in the blue who's looking cynically at me. Just be polite and just say, look, Professor Hill, Declan, whatever you want to call me, I'm unchanged. Those are big words. Take a look around the room. Take a look at this front row. Some of the best academics, some of the best investigators, some of the best students, quite frankly, in all of Canada and all of North America are here. And here I am just throwing it down. So I beg you guys, let me work with you in a different way than you've ever worked with somebody before. Because if I just come up here and do the standard PowerPoint presentation, blah, 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 I am literally doing Einstein's definition of insanity. I'm never going to have a different outcome if I just do the same things. So here's a couple of ways that we're going to do things differently. First of all, I'm going to ask my new best friend. Tell me your name again, please. Janessa and I were in a class just now, and I've been on poor Janessa since then. So Janessa, I want you to take out your mobile phone, please, and set it to 17 minutes. Because what has happened, sir, is that over the last 10 years, we're fundamentally learning differently. So you guys in your generation are learning differently than my generation. And what's happened is the screens have destroyed our spans of attention. It's really difficult. It doesn't mean that we're more stupid now. It just means that it's really difficult to sit, particularly at 6:30 in the evening, for 45 long minutes while Declan Hill goes on and on. So, as soon as her phone goes off after 17 minutes, we're going to take a break. We're going to take a 1-minute break, and I literally want you guys to stand up. All the gentlemen in the back row, particularly you, sir, with the white baseball cap, I recognize you. You're doing your best to hide your intelligence. I want you, tell me your name. Really nice to meet you, Jake, and I'm sorry to single you out. You just remind me of me in undergraduate, and I remember those days well. Jacob, I want you to come right down here and sit in the front row, please. Thank you so much. And please, all of you guys, come on. Thank you. I want everyone in the room after that 17 minutes to do that, to change your mind a little bit, to see the world a little bit. No, Jacob, right here in the front row, brother. Right here. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jacob. I love your spirit. The other thing that I would like to do, this is my son. Yes, I know it seems impossible that an ugly old chap like me can produce something so beautiful. I have the same spirit every day. But I watch my son, who's now 3.5, 4 years old, playing with his brother. And he's learning. He's at his intellectual capacity at his highest of his moment of his life. He's learning language. He's learning social environment. And he is not, believe it or not, sir, sitting down at breakfast table and going, Dad, can you do a PowerPoint presentation with lots of data? What is he doing to learn, Jacob? He's playing. He's having fun. So, Jacob, I really like your style. I like your sense of humor. And we're going to bring that to this presentation. I'm going to make lots of stupid jokes. It is a super intense subject. You're going to see mobsters talking. You're going to see some murders and attempted murders. But we're going to make jokes and we're going to play. Got it? Cool. Let's crack on. So there's 4 parts to this presentation. The first one is about events which are happening on Canadian streets right now, like today. And that is the mob war that's going on, essentially for control of the sports gambling world. The next thing we're going to be talking about is something that your other guest, Professor Richard McLaren, knows everything about, and that is the scale of, the next thing we're going to be talking about is sports gambling. Then we're going to be talking about the sports scandals which are affecting sports. And then finally, what I'm going to talk about is the Shohei Ohtani case and show how many odd questions there are floating around. Cool? Great. Okay, let's take a look at the first one, which is the mob war. That's the Hells Angels guys versus the 'Ndrangheta, which is the Italian mob of Canada. There are some difficult video coming up. So if anyone doesn't want to watch it or just wants to turn their head away, totally fine. I put this video in because this gentleman is a prominent citizen of London, Ontario. He was a Hells Angels bookie. His name is Rob Barletta. He used to own a couple of strip clubs here in London. And this is an attempted murder on him in Toronto. They missed him. And I've got to say, I do this video in Mexico, and the Mexican organized crime guy's like, what? That is the standard of organized crime in Canada? But there is a war going on, and there are bodies on the streets. Harry Linus was killed just off Danforth. And the motivation for these murders and attacks are sports gambling. It's who's going to control the illegal world of sports gambling. Now, this doesn't make any sense. Because we're just legalized. We've just legalized sports gambling, so you wouldn't think like, why is it worth murdering all these people? For those of you who don't speak French, this is from my colleague in La Presse up in Montreal, and it's the war over sports betting. Shots through the window of one of the Rizzuto family up there. The Rizzutos are basically the contested kings of organized crime of Canada. And this is yet another body. There have been a whole series of bodies in Montreal landing up on the tarmac because of this war. This I bring in because this was last May down in Burlington. He was eating at the Mandarin restaurant there, walked outside and was just killed in front of all the people there. I bring this up as well because there are many of you who think, well, that was last year. This was the announcement yesterday in Toronto. They just did a major organized crime bust of gambling work. I started this little section with an unsuccessful hit. This is the shooting of a mobster in Montreal in November. I did there was a whole bunch of various camera angles. I didn't want to make this too gory or show disrespect, but he made a mistake. He was sitting in the corner there, and these two guys came in with submachine guns while his bodyguards were asleep and just shot them all up. That's November of this year, 2020, of last year, 2025. This is a war that's going on constantly. And I also wanted to bring attention to this because this is my colleague who had a $100,000 hit execute, or they were attempting to execute this. So the people killed in this world are not simply the mobsters and the bookmakers and the various sports guys. The journalists also get targeted. His two previous organized crime correspondents at La Presse in Montreal were found, their bodies in the tarmac, in the parking lot, Jacob. The reason, and this is a key theme of tonight's conversation, and it answers that fundamental question, is why are they shooting each other at a time when sports gambling is legal? Is because it ain't going anywhere. The illegal market is actually growing bigger, and it's almost utterly unregulated in the province of Ontario. They say it is, and you remember I was teaching at 5 o'clock about your bullshit monitor? Your bullshit monitor, every time the government talks about sports gambling and their regulation, should be firmly in the red zone. But there's a fundamental question of why does organized crime kill for sports gambling? And a buddy of mine was Donnie Brasco. His real name is Joe Pistone. And he infiltrated for 7 years the Bonanno and Colombo crime families of New York. And I asked him, what's bigger, drugs, narcotics, or sports gambling? And his response surprised me. He said, look, narcotics, we do it like once in a while, but sports gambling is every single day. Because we get them addicted, we get them loan sharking, we lend them money, then they lose their money, then we take their houses, we take their business, we take their wives, we take everything they've got. We control them. Money laundering, for those of you in the financial section, money laundering through sports gambling is the easiest thing in the world. Easy. You just bet on both sides of an event. So if the Leafs are playing, I don't know, the Canadiens, you just bet in Montreal and Toronto, and in Toronto and Montreal, one of the teams is going to win. You've just washed your cash. So key lessons from this: sports gambling is huge for organized crime. You can make a heck of a lot of money, so it's worth killing people. And it's the easiest form of money laundering ever. So let's go into this world of sports gambling. Let's look at the geography of sports gambling. How much time do I have before my first break? 8 minutes. 8. Okay, so I'm now going to take off my clothes. I think it's time that you all saw a naked person. Okay, maybe not. But what I will do is I'm going to do an interpretive dance across this room, okay? Here, come on over, and your colleague, tell me your name again? Catherine. Nice to meet you again, Catherine. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this entire front stage into a 3-dimensional PowerPoint slide, okay? I'm going to dance as best I can across the room and show you the geography of the new world of sports gambling. And I know, sir, gentleman in the white sweatshirt, tell me your name? Nice to meet you. I could see the look of concern when I started taking my clothes off. So you are the reason I've stopped, okay? Everyone thank him afterwards. Everybody like, thank you, mate. That could have gone really bad. Okay, ladies, come over here, please. Okay, so this is 0. Just to repeat what we're doing. This is 0, and I'm going to dance to 100%. And I'm going to show you guys how the sports gambling world is organized. So here's the first question to these young ladies. What is the #1 city in the world of gambling? Las Vegas. Give them a round of applause, gang. You can see the look of terror on their face. It's fine. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to show the rest of the group how big Las Vegas's share of the world of gambling is, okay? So this is 0, and I'm going to dance across to 100%, okay? So I'm just going to show them through you guys, okay? Ready? So look at my shoes, well-polished shoes. 0, ready? This is Las Vegas's share of this market. Ready? Shoes, ladies, shoes. Ready? We'll try that again. Ready? 1, 2, 3. It's tiny, right? Okay, thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Thank you. Can we give them a round of applause, please, folks? So the world, the North American world of sports gambling, no matter what you read about Super Bowl and all those things, is actually quite small. The legal, illegal world is about like this. And then we'll throw in the British bookmakers, Bet365, Ladbrokes, William Hill, the ones that we all remember and recognize. They come to here. In fact, pretty much all of Europe comes to here. So North America, Europe, those crazy Aussies that would bet on anything are about here. We'll throw in all of Africa, for those of you in development. The enslavement of poor people in debt through sports gambling has now become massive in Africa. And we're going to throw in Europe, Africa, Australia, North America. We'll throw in Latin America, and we're here. Everything else, ladies and gentlemen, and I mean everything else in this sports gambling world is in Asia. They dominate it. They control it. All the biggest sports gambling companies are companies that you haven't heard of, or excuse me, most of you have not heard of. Some of you, I'm sure, do. They control 65 to 70% of this market. And they're mostly offshore, and they're mostly illegal. Sorry, I'm hobbling a bit, by the way, in case you're wondering, the slow thing. And brother, tell me your name. Ryan, was it? Ryan, I'm now putting my clothes back on. Okay. Complete relief now. I can see it in your face. Yeah, okay. Okay, so let's take a look at that world. In fact, let's take a look, Ryan. You've got a nice loud voice, do you? Okay, I want you to read the next slide. We've just had fun dancing around the room, but I want you, if you wouldn't mind, just reading nice and loudly for everyone in the back how big this world is that I've danced across.
500 billion Interpol in 2013, 1.5 trillion Patrick J. Hong Kong Jockey Club, and 1.6 trillion Europol.
Thank you. Can you guys give them a round of applause, please? Thank you very much. And brother, what I want to do is give other voices in the room, so it's not just like me yabbering away. So I might come to you because you've got the persona of a Shakespearean actor. I really like it. And Jacob, you're not off the hook yet. You too will be asked. So anyone know this city? This is, you remember we were talking about Las Vegas just now? This is the city that's replaced it. Dimitri, I know that you know this. I know that everyone knows. Dimitri, just stand up. He's one of the stars of Huron College. I'm sorry, brother. Your face is now about the same color as one of the seats. Yeah, thanks. However, what is this city, Dimitri?
That's going to be embarrassing if I get this wrong, but is it Macau?
It is Macau. Well done, lad. Well done. And I knew you knew it. I have complete confidence in you. Now that building, it's like a Sylvester Stallone film from the 1980s called RoboCop. And that is just one casino. And that casino takes, it's always difficult to figure out the truth with casinos, but somewhere between 4 and 8 times the total take of the entire strip of Las Vegas. So again, it dominates. This world dominates. This is the capital of sports gambling. Again, I want to hurry quickly through, so I won't ask Dimitri again, but this is Manila. Manila dominates sports gambling. This is where the line for the NFL, the NHL, the MLB gets set. Not in Vegas, but in this place, San Jose, Costa Rica. Let's take, before we have to stop, when is that, 1 minute?
2 minutes.
2 minutes, all right. If you want to take a photo, by the way, guys, these are the biggest sports gambling companies in the world. And I want to show you just a sense of the power of them. I did an interview, it was a very full-on interview in Manila with the former head of Maxibet, a guy called Scorpion Lamb. And they strip searched me, and it was the middle of the night and all this kind of stuff. But one of the things that he shared with me was the size and power of his company. So please put up your hand if you have ever heard of a sports company called Adidas or Adidas. Please put your hand up. And if there's anyone in marketing or sports who hasn't got their hand raised, you're probably in the wrong subject. Okay. On a good year, they make roughly $10 billion a year. They're the second biggest sports merchandise marketing company in the world, just behind Nike. Just that one company, MaxBet, now IBC Bet, they make $48 billion. So at least 4.5 times the biggest sports marketing company. That shows you the relative size and economic power of these companies. Here is, for those of you who haven't been gambling, an SBO betting site that I downloaded today. You can see on one side the Winter Olympics, winter sport, like pretty much almost any sport that you can care to name in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, they bet, this market, this $1.63 trillion market, bets on 60,000 sports events a day. That wasn't a mistake. I didn't mean to say a year. I didn't mean to say a month. I didn't mean to say a week. I mean a day. And within those 60,000 single sports events a day, they can bet on 20,000 single moments. Who's going to win the next serve? Who's going to win the next face-off? What are the numbers on all the players in an aggregate formation? Is it above or below a certain number? I'm going to show you in our next section how this is a new form of gambling, something that we've never seen before. But now, let's take that 1 minute break, guys. Shake it off, stand up, chat with people beside you, and just have a moment. I'm going to have a sip of coffee. Okay, guys, let's not enjoy the break too much. I could tell my new friend Siobhan at the back is like, this is great, I'm loving this break. Far better than presenter. The next thing, let's talk about this world. Again, just to review, we're looking, I did that funny dance that so worried my new friend Ryan. We danced across the stage. It's a $1.63 trillion market. Now let's look at how it's organized, what sports gambling looks like. And the reason why I'm doing that is because there's a demographic cliff around this question. The gentlemen mostly and the ladies in the front row think about gambling different from those of you who are sitting behind them. And I want to walk through what that means. There's another theme that I really, really want to emphasize throughout this talk, is that there's very little difference substantively between the legal, quote, regulated market in Ontario and the illegal. And those are big words, right? Like, illegal companies, just like these organized crime guys. I hope to convince you by the end of this session that I'm not speaking in an embellished fashion. They're doing some very worrying things. First of all, just looking at the legal market, you can't win with FanDuel or DraftKings or any of these sports gambling companies. And if you think you can, then you are deluded and wrong. You cannot win permanently. Brother, if you're the gentleman with the brown sweatshirt, who's marvelously handsome and charismatic, but if you're a sports gambler and you think that you can win consistently, you can't. As soon as you show any sign of consistently winning, they will start to bring your account down, and then they will cut you off. However, if you're a loser, Welcome, brother. That is the essential market. Please tell me your name.
I'm Miles.
Nice to meet you, Miles. Thank you very much for allowing me to single you out and stuff. Thank you. So, Miles, this isn't just me. These are some of the professional gamblers that I speak to on a fairly regular basis who are complaining. They're the best and some of the most intelligent gamblers in the world, Miles. They're like, we can't get our bets on. They're closing us down. This is who they're looking for, Miles. They're looking for the addicts. That's who they're really looking for. They're not looking for a smart guy like you. They're not looking for a smart guy like you, Dimitri. They're not looking for the guys that will beat them. They will shut them out and they will take them. But they're looking for the addicts. It's exactly the same as the illegal guys. Some of the world's most famous people in Hollywood. Part of my next book is about the poker rings, where they recruit famous people to bring famous degenerate gamblers like Affleck and Matthew, what's his name, former Spider-Man. This is an interview that I did. Jacob, would you mind reading this for us? This is an interview I did on that Scorpion Lamb trip to Manila with a guy who'd worked both legal and illegal side. Jacob, can you take it away?
The real business model of a lot of bookmakers is relying on the degenerates. They will talk about family entertainment, but really the average gambler is a loss to these bookmakers. Real money is to be made by identifying the heavy loser, the kind of person who would gamble away the baby's diaper money.
What's driving this is something that we haven't seen before. Do you remember I began this presentation by talking about the effects on our brain of mobile phones and saying I can only talk to you guys for 17-minute intervals? It's the same thing with sports gambling. This section of the audience thinks that you have to go and see somebody. Even instinctively, if you know you're wrong, that's still in our minds. That you have to go and have a bookie, that you've got to go to a racetrack, you've got to go to a casino. You, over the younger generation, no, this is not true. We just take out our phones. We just start tapping phones. It's called frictionless gambling, and some of my academic colleagues in Sweden have estimated that for some people, it's 100 times more addictive than heroin. The people who are desperately in the targets are every single young male in this room, starting from 14. They're after you. They're not after an old chap like me. They're after you because if they can get you young, they've got you hooked for all of your life. Joking aside, this is an organization that I urge, I pray that nobody in this room will ever become a member of. If you become a member of this group, then I have failed. They're called Gambling with Lives. They are a group of parents whose children have killed themselves thanks to gambling. They gather 1 or 2 new members every day. The founding mother was a psychologist before her son committed suicide on this. And she talks about how frictionless gambling is marketed, how this new form of addiction that we don't talk about is sweeping across our societies, and young people are being hooked into it with no idea that they're never going to be able to make money, have no idea that they are in the targets for these guys. And then when they get into trouble, they're told that it's their fault. This is on their website. Just take a look at these beautiful young people, smiling, happy. And this is the difference in this addiction. Again, the academic studies on gambling addiction are robust. 1 in 5 of addicts, far higher than alcoholics or drug guys, think and talk about and put together plans for self-harm. And they don't do this by accident, by the way. I return to that theme that I've talked about, legal and illegal in that amorphous world of gambling and how unregulated it is in Ontario. I don't know if you can quickly gather the information, Miles, but what they're doing, the bookmaking companies, is you're reporting, oh, you know, I've got a problem, can you please exclude me? And they're like, search for the addict. Awesome. And so as you go down the street, they can track you with GPS and you're passing a bookmaker shop or you're passing some ad and they're going to start zinging you with text. The very people who have identified themselves as most vulnerable, they're hitting with ads. And it's not by accident. This is another study at the House of Lords. 86% of their profits of the mainstream bookmakers come from 5% of their customers. The other 95% are just, yeah. That's called chasing the addict. Look, don't take my word for it. This is an interview with a really senior bookmaker in one of these legalized bookmakers. So I want you to hear his words. We put him in hidden camera, blah, blah, blah. We obscured his voice as well. But I think it's powerful, and I want you guys to see this.
Gambling is used extensively all over the world to launder money. If I was to estimate, based on the amount of accounts I've seen of that nature, it would have to be millions and millions of dollars that are laundered every year. It's just a scam. The fact that nobody can win, we only want losing customers. That's it. It was just fucked. And they know what advertising works, what algorithm works. They know how to maximize their profit, which is to get people to lose more and more. It is just rotten to the core. I was a customer account supervisor at one of the biggest gambling companies in the world. With 21st century technology, the punter doesn't really know what's going on. And behind the scenes, there's all of this maths going on that analyzes your betting and ensures the company wins. It will always win. Customers would be categorized based on their profitability. So if a customer lost millions of dollars, they would be labeled a VIP, and only the best staff would talk to them. But if you were a problem customer, that meant that you were winning money. So you'd be labeled with a big badge that said that you're a problem, and that needs to be dealt with. The risk rating is done by an algorithm. It's just how much they've lost against whatever other metrics the company's decided. The risk rating essentially turns off winners and stops them from betting and cranks up the dial for anybody that's losing so they can lose more and more and more money. It's actually a design feature to ensure that those that lose are allowed to lose more. So if a customer says something that could indicate they've got a problem with gambling, you would just have to go through a series of questions and just tick, 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 and that was it. Suicide calls were to be dealt with by only a senior manager, but I had a manager tell me that they just had to make a decision based on the threat and stick to it, and that it didn't matter once they hung up the phone because they didn't know whether or not they followed through with their threat or not, so that it didn't really matter. So that's probably still the worst thing I've ever heard anybody say, because you don't know whether or not they killed themselves or not.
So, to review. We began with the dance. It's a $1.63 trillion market. You can bet on up to 60,000 games a day. You can bet within those games on 20,000 single events. The gambling of today's generation, I really hope you're not going out for your bookmakers. Rushing out. Okay, it's frictionless gambling. And it's my opinion, even though I'm a big proponent of legalized gambling, that there's very difference between regulated, legalized gambling companies in Ontario and the illegal guys that are shooting each other on the street. So let's turn now to the sports scandal. How many minutes do I have till the next break? 5 minutes. Excellent. You guys okay for another video? Okay, this is an interview I did with a former head of one of the major crime families of New York.
You know, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. That life at times is a violent life, and if you had to use the threat of violence or violence itself to get your jobs done, you do it. And you know, unfortunately, I know of cases where an athlete was put in a hospital, you know, or handicapped in a way that he couldn't play the game. It happens. I'm Michael Francis, and for almost 20 years of my life, I was a made man in the Colombo crime family in New York, one of the 5 New York La Cosa Nostra families. I was involved in gambling. I had a major gambling operation. When you're involved in that life, some way, somehow, you're involved in gambling. And I had, at any point in time, 12 or 13 bookmakers working for me. Obviously, their targets were always athletes. They're pretty easy to exploit. And, to me, it was great. I mean, great business. I mean, we can get athletes going along with us to compromise the outcome of a game. Terrific, because there was big money in it. So it was major, major business for me. We know in life it says that when you borrow money, you become a slave to the lender. Well, when you're an athlete and you get involved with a gambler, you become a slave to the fixer. It's the same thing. You're going to do his bidding. Once you cross that line, do one thing for that gambler, you become his slave. We used to hang out in some of the clubs, in Manhattan, Brooklyn, where a lot of the college teams would come in and play. St. John's, some of the major universities. And a lot of these basketball players would go to the same clubs. They like to hang out, they like to party. Mob guys love to party. We live for that. And we'd get our eye on 1 or 2 of the guys and wine them and dine them. Hey, come on over to the table, we're your friends, sit down, have a bite to eat, bring a few women over, give them attention. And these are women that we knew, probably we had something to do at the club most of the time. And you kind of bring this along once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. Finally, you set them up for the conversation, because we're friends now. Yeah, sit down, let me talk to you. I said, listen, you're a smart guy. I'm your good friend. Let me tell you how you're gonna make some money. 10 grand in my pocket, pull it out, put it on a table in front of them. More money than they ever seen in cash in their life. Once we get it, they get into us, so to speak, then they do whatever they're told to do, and that's it. And inevitably, the scenario that I just described, it always turns, and the way it'll turn is this. Athletes have a harder time underperforming than they do overperforming, because they're athletes at heart, and especially these young kids in college. These are not criminals right off the bat, these are young kids. And it gets into their heads. And eventually they'll come back and say, you know what, I got 20 grand, 30 grand, 40 grand, I can't do this anymore. It's getting to me. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And my response was always the same. Excuse me, we had a deal. You don't break your word with me. You got 10 games to go. You're done when I tell you you're done. That's it. Again, there's no love relationship between a mob guy and whoever their player is, or their pawn, or whoever it is. They're there to make money, and that's it. I've been to every Major League Baseball team, most of the NFL, all the NBA, and over 400 universities here in America, and spoke to every student athlete. You would be surprised how naive these people are. They know what they're doing on the field, but they're very naive when it comes to the business of gambling. When I do a football team, I'll get the biggest guy in usually a guard, or a tackle. I said, stand up. They get all nervous. I said, stand up. What are you worried about? You're 3 times my size. Stand up. And they'll stand up, and I'll say, you're pretty good on the field. I wouldn't match up with you in any way, shape, or form. I said, but I'll tell you what. You cross this line, and you come into my business, the business of gambling, I said, I'll make a sissy out of you. I said, because I don't play by the rules, and I'm not afraid to hurt you, and I ain't gonna fight you. I said, I'll get you the way I gotta get you. I said, so you don't want to know somebody like me.
Let's take that break. 1 minute break, guys. I'm just going to be given the equivalent of the large hook around my neck saying, could you get the heck off the stage, please? There's some more interesting people coming along. So I'm just going to wrap up my speech very quickly in 5 minutes, okay? So put that on in 5 minutes. We're now going to look at the sports scandal world. And I'm actually glad, because I'm just about to invite my friend, hero, and inspiration up on the stage as well. But let's just take a quick bird's eye view at all the sports scandals that are going on as this new world of sports gambling and the mob hits the sports that we love. This is John Tay Porter. For those of you who haven't seen the messages that he's sending back to mobsters saying, if I don't pay you $8,000, you're going to come up here and fuck me up. Sorry about the language, but that is the verbatim text. We can just go through them. This is some academic work that I've done where we looked through all the major sports leagues and said the number one by multiple stages of sports league that's going to get hit by match fixing, NCAA. And sure enough, it's just been rocketed. I'm consulting with the NCAA, and it's an appalling problem. We'll just go through all of these and jump through them. This is just one of the fixing stuff. This is the mafia group that I infiltrated. These are the match fixes that they did as well. But let's cut right to Shohei Ohtani's case, because I want to come up with two key factors in the 3.5 minutes that I have left. By the way, for those of you who don't know who Shohei Ohtani is, he's the gentleman on the right. He ruined the Toronto Blue Jays' chances for the World Series almost single-handedly. But for those of you who don't follow baseball, he's arguably the top athlete in the world because he's single-handedly rescuing baseball. Baseball is a dying sport in America. It's being replaced by the NFL. It's really dad's sport. So their market is the MLB, Major League Baseball's market is now Asia. They really want to attract new athletes in Japan, new fans and sponsorship in Japan, South Korea, China, etc. So he's like a dream for these guys. And they want to expand their gambling issues. So last year there was a case where it was presumed that the chap on the left, his translator, was purportedly stealing money from Shohei Ohtani, up to $16 million, and Shohei Ohtani never noticed that he was missing $16 million. Okay. One of the things that I talk to about with match fixes is that they target the star players. People are always surprised that Shoeless Joe, blah, 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 is targeted, but that's what they do. They target the guys that can actually make a difference. And you remember I was talking to you about your demographic, the young people in this room, how you guys have a target painted on your back, essentially? The number one profession in your demographic are athletes. Athletes love to gamble, and they suck at it. Because everything that makes them good at sports, they never give up, they're utterly obsessed, they're incredibly competitive, make them terrible gamblers. Like really, really bad gamblers. And I could literally go from now till 8 o'clock just naming famous athletes who are desperately poor now, even though they're famous star athletes, because they lost it all through gambling addiction. There's some really similar cases, technically, between a guy called Pete Rose, who in the 1980s was the Shohei Ohtani of baseball, and he was thrown out of baseball because of his gambling, and the Shohei Ohtani case. Friends were used and stuff. And by the way, I'm not suggesting that Shohei Ohtani was at all guilty. However, I am suggesting to you that there's something about this case that has not been properly examined. And just run your eyes down the number of clients and the number of different sports miles that people have not discussed, that the federal authorities have not talked about, the National Football League coaches and players, the other Major League Baseball guys that were there. But this next PowerPoint is the one that really should blow your minds. It involves a person that you've never heard of, probably. But this is really significant. The top level of people are organized crime guys, blah, 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 blah. But this bottom guy, Scott Sabella, was placing bets with the same network of illegal gamblers that Shohei Ohtani's translator was with. And he could be convincingly, sorry, just give me one more minute. He could convincingly be named the king of Las Vegas. He was the CEO, the president of MGM Grand, which is one of the biggest legal sports gambling companies in America. Legal. So he's a legal bookmaker. He's the head of the company. And he has a $5 million account with the illegal guys. In the 30 seconds that's running through, I really don't want to overstay my welcome. Just a couple of questions. The interpreter, the addicted gambling interpreter of Shohei Ohtani, one of the world's biggest sports guys, was given a credit line by the illegal guys of more than $324 million. Dimitri, if you're looking for a career, clearly translation is the one to go for. Forget all this thing about banking executives and things like that. Translation is where it's at. So I will leave you with that. Just let these questions hang in the air. We could spend hours exploring it. But now I have the great honor and privilege of inviting to the stage a hero of mine. Richard McLaren is clearly one of the greatest investigators in the world. I know that's difficult because you're thinking, hey, he lives in London. I see the guy every day. You know, blah, blah, what's that? There's a building named after him. But I'm telling you, his name brings fear to the corrupt in the sports world. When they hear McLaren is on the case, they get frightened. But more importantly than that, the name Richard McLaren brings hope to the honest athletes. The ones that you never hear about, the ones who aren't doping, the ones that are struggling to be the very best that they can, and praying and hoping that a sports investigator like Richard McLaren is on the case, keeping their sports clean. He's taken on the Russians, he's taken on organized crime, he's taken on cases of myriad sexual abuse in African basketball. It is an honor, it's an inspiration to be able to call him my friend, and he's on the stage now with us. Please, can you guys give this man a round of applause? Can you also spare some applause for the man with the hardest job in Canada starting early June? He is the sports lawyer, Tim Hutzul, for Canada Soccer for the World Cup. The World Cup makes the Super Bowl look like neighborhood kids in the back row. Every single one of the more than 100 games will attract over $1 billion in gambling. He has to deal with organized crime guys. He has to deal with irate British football hooligans when they inevitably lose their next game. And he has to deal with Donald Trump, because Canada and America and Mexico are sharing the hosting of this World Cup. So Tim and I have been talking for almost a year now, discussing, strategizing how he's going to be able to do it. And I really have great respect and admiration. Guys, can you give an applause for this man?
Declan, thank you for that lovely introduction. As Barry said, the most important reason I'm here is my son's a Huron student, so proud Huron parent. Before we get going, and I ask the first question, I'd encourage all of you to read Declan's book, The Fix. I read it years ago when it came out. I remember it being a page turner at the time. When we decided to put this together, I bought another copy because I couldn't find mine. It's in a box in the basement somewhere. And you know, I've read it before, but it's still a page turner. A couple of times I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this is actually happening. They did what, where? And so if you found tonight interesting, please get the book. It's a wonderful read. For everybody, you know, the dangers of gambling is obviously something we'd encourage all of you to think about. I'll kick it off with a bit of an unconventional question, just because pitchers and catchers report in less than 10 days. First I'll ask Declan, and then I'll ask Richard. So you have a Hall of Fame ballot. Does Pete Rose get in? Assuming he already has, but would you have voted for him based on his past?
No, never, ever.
Richard, similar question for you. Hall of Fame,
No.
Sam Sosa and Mark McGuire, do they get in or not?
No, I don't think so.
All right. So
Do you want me to explain why? Again, for the people who don't know who Pete Rose is, he was the major star of baseball in the 1970s and 80s. It was difficult to open a sports page in a newspaper or radio or TV, as we used to consume media back there, and not hear of him. He was gambling both, he was an addicted gambler. He was, quote, a degenerate gambler. That's what his friends, quote, would call him that. And the issue now facing sport isn't whether there's a fix going on, isn't whether there's actually a credibility challenge. It's whether people could imagine that there might be something. And I would challenge people in good faith, if you're watching a game, if you're watching a sports event, and it's not occurring to you, am I watching this for real or not? Like, is this theater or is this the genuine, glorious uncertainty of sport? That's where we are now with sport. And guys like Pete Rose have been dragging us down that circuit because of their close identification with gambling. So no, absolutely not.
Do you want to add, Richard?
I think gambling, and you've been hearing from Dec a lot about it. Thanks very much for your very kind introduction, by the way, Dec. Gambling is an enormous problem, and I think putting people in that have been involved in it, it doesn't make any good sense. So I would be opposed.
So on a personal note, in looking at both of your careers, you've investigated and reported on people with large vested interests in not having their business in the public eye. I'll ask each of you in turn, and we'll start with Richard. Have you ever been scared? And can you share a story where you were scared about some of the people you've been investigating?
All right, for definitely, I have been. I'll give you two quickies. And one of them happened right here at Western. There was a box arrived at the law school where I'm a professor, and it looked like a doping control box with all the different documents and pieces you need for getting samples collected. And it came out of Buffalo from the Russian television agency, and we were very concerned that it was maybe contaminated, it might even be exploding. So we called the local security of the university to start with, and the local police, who don't know much about these things, and they said, it's nothing. And I said, look, there could be something in there that would contaminate the school, the law school, maybe the whole university. What's going on here? And finally, we persuaded them that they better have a serious look at it. Turned out it was a hoax. They just wanted to impress upon me, in particular, the university I was working for, I suppose, as well, we could do serious harm here, get off our case. That's one. The other is the same organization, Russian radio and television, showed up at the main door of my condo here in London and was trying to take some shots of me while I opened the door. Then I realized what was going on. I closed the door, and then they put that on Russian television to say, oh, look, I was terrified. I wasn't terrified, but I then knew that I was in serious trouble. I needed to get them out of the building, and I needed to take extra security problems. Those are two quick examples.
In Declan, and before you answer, in the book, I can remember reading a chapter where you had to move the dresser in front of the door and take out the light bulb just to give you a chance to react in case somebody came kicking down the door. Can you share one example where you were scared from what you were doing?
No. I'm sorry. Yes, I have been terrified. Yes, I continue to be desperately afraid when I do some of my research. And I'm sorry. I know I do the little striptease dance, but I'm not going to do an emotional striptease dance for the guys. I'm sorry.
I must say I'm impressed by the courage both of you have in pursuing your work. So we'd like to open this up and make it interactive. So if anybody has a question, you don't want to just hear from me, please put up your hand. No questions?
Yeah, Declan, you're obviously very passionate about what you do. What kind of led you to be so passionate about your work? Where did all of this come from?
My sense is that sport, in some ways, is one of the finest things that we have in our society. It's our vehicle for teaching our young people the narratives, the ideals, the values. I think of my time as a sports person and the camaraderie and the passion that I had with sports, and it's a fantastic experience. Sports, yes, there's lots of challenges, but they can be saved. And they should be saved. And they must be saved. And that is my message. I'm willing to put, Tim indicated, my life on the line for it, but I believe sports brings out the finest in humanity.
When we look at the prediction markets, so like Robinhood and betting not on sports, does this bring you maybe some hope that it's going to clear out some room for sports, or is it just going to increase the size of the pie in the gambling market?
Okay, so a quick context thing. The theme of the last couple of months in the sports gambling world has been something called prediction markets, which it's fairly complicated, but just really simply, it's like the eBay of gambling. So you think Trump is going to run for a third term of US presidency, and you can go on these prediction markets and make a bet like that. You think Survivor is coming out, the 50th anniversary of Survivor. Which candidate do you think you can win? And you bet against some other person halfway around the world or in another state to do it. So that's a, quote, fair prediction market. And there's a whole bunch of regulation, discussion, and debate about it. I'm fairly neutral about it. I think it's very much like how you regulate sports gambling. I'm a big fan of legal, well-regulated sports gambling. I'm not a fan of hypocrisy, societal hypocrisy, which is what we had before legal sports gambling. But, so if you can see who's betting on these events and how they're betting, I think it's a good idea, because you get transparency in the market. Does that make sense? Because I don't want to go down the rabbit hole. I'll lose 9/10 of the audience. They'll be like, hello, it wasn't bad until he got to prediction markets. But
it brings up a lot, maybe not just mobsters or mafia involvement, but for example, in the Grammys the other day, the host, the MC, made a joke about how, he just randomly started with potato and said, if you had bet that I said potato in this as an MC at the Grammys, and you just won a ton of money, congratulations. Himself. They said that he bet on it. Leads to a lot of insider trading.
Again, I'll be very, very brief. Just before 9/11, there was somebody somewhere in the market that sold an enormous, that bet on the market shorting in a huge way and made vast amounts of money off the terrorist attacks on 9/11. We still haven't figured out who that is. So I believe as much transparency as you can get in the market. If you know who's betting on potato, great. At least you know who's betting on them.
The girl on the aisle there.
Hi there. You spoke about how 60,000 different sports can be bet on in the day, or 60,000 games. And the first thing that came to my mind was back when the pandemic initially hit and thousands and millions of sports games were being canceled all around the world. So I was wondering, what did these, groups of people do in this time to try and supplement their income and still keep their hold on the world?
So what they did, and you can see it now, they'll get these kind of quasi-slave plantations in Burma and Cambodia and Thailand, and they'll have games between Arsenal and Manchester United or New York Yankees and the Red Sox. They're not just a bunch of their slavey guys. And then you can bet on those games. And so that's what they were doing during COVID. They're just faking these, they're just putting on fake events.
The gentleman in the middle.
Hi, Declan. You mentioned that you interviewed the CEO or the person in charge of some of those massive betting companies.
Yes.
I was curious how you went about getting in contact with that person and why they would let you interview them in the first place.
He'd read my book, and he was kind of a Mozart of the sports gambling world. He was a youngish Chinese guy. Like many of those guys in that world, he was a Hakka Chinese. As you probably know, there's many different ethnicities among, quote, Chinese. And the Hakka are notorious both for organized crime and for gambling and for fishing, frankly. So he was a genius, and he'd gone and worked for a British bookmaker in Gibraltar, and they treated him, as happens, with outright racism. So he'd been like, I can beat you guys. I'm going to come back to Manila, and I'm going to beat you at your own game. And he did. And so he saw me as a similar outsider. It was a fairly intense meeting. The rain was coming down. I just flew in. There was a typhoon had just hit Manila. They got me. They put me in an unmarked white van. They pulled my ID. They said, you're not getting this back till the interview's over. We went inside. And it was just this huge bookmaking center, and there was a big shark tank in the middle of the thing with this massive shark going around. And there was about 400 bettors, and there were like little expensive Chinese Beijing dogs going everywhere and peeing. And there were hundreds of attractive women in little short bikinis, just kind of prancing around and stuff. And their hefty bodyguards took me and strip searched me in all the ways that you can imagine to make sure I wasn't wearing a hidden camera or anything like that. And they brought me back, and Scorpion and I sat for 4 hours talking about sports gambling. But all the way through that, the women were screaming, like just, like constantly. And I'm like, what's going on? And he goes, oh, don't worry, I'll show you. So anyway, we finished the interview, and he was a really bright guy. And he takes me down this hallway, and we go to the steel door. And behind the door, the women are just like screaming. And he pulls open the door. So I'll tell you the end of that story at the end of question time. That's called a cliffhanger,
Good old-fashioned
gentlemen, ladies.
cliffhanger. Right there in the second row.
I have a question for Richard. So how do we combat this? Is it regulation, enforcement, education? What's the approach? And maybe you can speak to some of the work with integrity in some of the sports.
Well, you know, what we've done, Bob, is we've unleashed a monster here with legalized gambling. And we've got a very short time frame in which we've actually, that is in Ontario, had time to deal with this problem. Well, we had a long planning phase because it only became legal in April of 2023. So we're into the third year now, I guess. And the biggest thing, two things that they did, I have to be careful here because I do some work for the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario as one of the regulators, but the sports books are not actually regulated by the regulator. What they're required to do is regulate themselves, self-regulation. And then they have to report to a monitor, and then the monitor decides if whatever they've reported about problem betting in one particular sport, one particular day, whatever, has to be released to a much wider audience, and then they have a whole network of release. And that's all they do in the way of regulation. So it's self-regulation of these massive companies that you've seen the data on. There's a lot of small competitions. They don't care about what's going on in the betting in those markets. So they don't really self-regulate that at all. And recently, FanDuel was fined for the first time ever in Ontario, $350,000 for not doing its proper sports analysis. They do a lot of analysis of where they're getting trapped, and you've heard people say, well, if you're winning a lot, you're going to get the amount of odds reduced, you're going to get the amount of bet level that you can bet at determined and reduced. What we've done wrong in Ontario, and are starting to do wrong in other provinces, is we've never brought in competing legislation to actually go after not the sports book, but the whole manipulation process as a conspiracy. Because if you could use conspiracy statutes like you can do in the United States, we'd have a much more effective, at least legal avenue to get at some of these problems. So I think we've unleashed a monster, and I think all of us who watch sports on television can define in the last 3 years how much advertising and sport announcers talk has changed. And the focus now in a lot of sport, NFL in particular, is on the odds and why the odds are changing, and people talking about the odds versus what's going on in the playing field, which never existed 5 years ago. So to get at better integrity, I think we need to really drive at a much better legal regime when we don't have it right now. Self-regulation doesn't work. It didn't work in the insurance and the securities industry, and it's not going to work here. And that's being demonstrated by some of the fines that are being issued.
I think we have time for one more question, and I'll turn it over to the president in a second. The other thing I would say, oh, I know, I'm going to give you your question. Declan had a cliffhanger. If you like that cliffhanger, I would also encourage you to read the book. If you're a fan of the World Cup, see if you can read the part of the book that what an Asian KFC has to do with the highest games in the World Cup. It's a fascinating story. Mm-hmm. Barry Craig, last question.
Rich, you've investigated cheating in the Sochi Olympics. The Olympics were on the verge of now. Are the stories going to be drugging or gambling?
Both. Both. And they're both run by the same syndicates, too. They're in the game on all sides.
I think we're out of time now. So let's have a round of applause for Declan Hill, please. I don't know how I ended up on this podium, but students, you're lucky to have two leading people in their fields and such respected people worldwide here addressing us tonight.
Thanks. Been a pleasure.
Okay, you guys can stay on stage if you want. I think, yeah, sounds good? Okay. Well, I have a very difficult job of following that amazing presentation from all our speakers. But I promise no one in this audience is going to get picked on. I can maybe except you, Declan, but. So yeah, my name is Ram Gururajan, and I have the honor of giving a few quick thank yous. And so we've heard guest speakers of this high caliber, and the only thing that I can say tonight is that these conversations reminded me why perspectives are so important. And not just in the world of sport, but in society more broadly. The Nation Builder program is built around one core idea, that Canada is uniquely positioned on the global stage right now, not as a superpower, but as a middle power, with the responsibility and the opportunity to lead the global community. As Mark Carney recently argued in his powerful World Economic Forum speech, this moment calls for middle powers and all actors to unite and act together. These fundamental ideas sit at the heart of the Nation Builder program and defines who a nation builder is. Throughout the year, we've been immersed in experiential learning, meeting community leaders, policymakers, entrepreneurs, and advocates throughout different sectors of Canada. Tonight showed us that sport belongs squarely in that conversation. I have the difficult job to synthesize everything that these guys have just said, but as an aspiring consultant, I'm going to break that down into 3 key points. 1, mental health matters. Declan gave us some really interesting statistics. You said that there's 60,000 games and there's 20,000 events happening every day. I did some math on that. That's 1.2 billion possible ways to bet in one day. The World Series just happened. I know at least 5 people that bet for the World Series. Another interesting statistic, 20% of bettors think about committing suicide. One of my friends could have been thinking about committing suicide. It is fundamental to check in. It is fundamental to listen. It is fundamental to care, to be a leader with heart, and to be empathetic, and to listen to those around you to try to create a better opportunity and to ensure that you are your brother's keeper. The second big thing, there are bad actors at play all around us. Quote, looking for addicts. Cheating happens all around us. And so to be a nation builder, to be a leader with heart, to be someone that wants to make a difference, you have to be adaptable. You have to be the person that's gonna detect their bullshit meter at someone that's lying to you to your face and actually act on it. I think the third big thing is, I found this really funny, be the problem customer. You talked about 2 types of customers. I think it is so important to be cognizant, to defy the systems that are built to oppress you, to suppress you, and to ensure that you are the customer that wins when the system wants you to lose. I think despite gambling having such a profound impact on a lot of people, people are going to do it anyway. And so as leaders with heart, as nation builders, we have to continue to be on the eye, continue to look out for opportunities where we can support our fellow community. So on behalf of the Nation Builder students and the entire Huron community, I'd like to offer a few thank yous. Thank you to our audience. You guys have sat through an amazing presentation. Your curiosity, your drive, and your energy was unmatched. I know getting picked on was definitely not easy. Shout out to you, Dimitri. Thank you to the programming team, led by Siobhan, and for just setting up such an incredible event for us to be in. Thank you to Lisa and the entire advancement team for organizing every aspect of this entire Nation Builder event. I know that reaching out to all of you was not easy. Thank you to our president and the entire executive team. It is so difficult to create a path and a strategy to build leaders with heart. And you guys have continued supporting programs that challenge me to be a leader with heart. And finally, I'd like to thank our 3 guest speakers. Now, before I continue, I'd like to invite 3 key people to present a small memorarium of our gratitude. And now, while I introduce them, and after this, I'd like everyone that's able to stand up and give our guest speakers a standing ovation. And so thank you, Declan Hill, Tim Hutzul, and Richard McLaren for your amazing energy and for everything you added to this conversation. Truly, this is, I think, the best lecture I've sat through. Tonight we learned about corruption, accountability, courage, and the cost of speaking the truth to power. We learned how systems fail, how integrity is tested, and how easily trust can be broken. So the real question isn't, what did we hear tonight? It's, what are we going to do with it? What choices will we make when integrity is inconvenient? What will we protect when silence feels safer? And how will we show up in sport, in our institutions, in our communities to build something better than we inherited? Nations aren't built by speeches or policies alone. They're built by people who decide again and again to act with courage, to demand accountability, and to believe that fairness still matters. So as I leave you tonight, I invite everyone to ask yourself one question. What are you going to do to help build our nation? Thank you.